Many people, when they work corporate jobs, they think they can go into a decent company after getting some solid education at university or high school and college. They've got a solid foundation. They can go into the job and work hard. And the same way you could work hard at school or college and get a decent grade, and an effective way of working in the corporate environment would be to work hard and get a decent pay and decent pay rises and progress on that basis. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It requires you to be able to fit in. And if you can't fit in at your current workplace, it's worthwhile thinking what other options there might be, where maybe you want to move from a bigger company to a smaller company where you have a bit more comfortability in your day-to-day life. Maybe you can dress more casually, speak a bit more freely. So it's very important to consider that. And here we've got a very interesting case of someone who feels like they don't fit in the corporate environment. So let's listen to what she has to say.
The way I feel bamboozled, the way I feel lied to, the way I feel wholly unprepared for the realities of what is corporate life is just blowing me.
Got it!
And the fact that this is supposed to be my whole working life, this is supposed to be my whole working life experience until I'm damn near 70 years old. Do people even retire anymore? Because I can't imagine dealing with this for 40 more years of my life. I just can't imagine. Let's talk about it. I don't think growing up I put that much emphasis into what I would do when I'm older. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and the whole quarterly check-in of what do you want to be when you grow up just wasn't really a reality in my life. I was acutely aware of what my parents did for work and that jobs existed, but the idea of choosing a profession or what do you want to be when you grow up never really landed for me. And anytime somebody asked me that, I'd be like, I want to be a singer, I want to be a dancer. I'm an okay dancer. I'm an okay singer in a way that would even facilitate an answer like that. But I think all kids have that answer. As I grew up, going through high school even, college was a thing, right? And my mom, who I was primarily raised by, went to college. I didn't grow up with an experience in which my mom was constantly preparing me for college, and I was in college prep courses and I was volunteering, and all of these things were leading me to the road of going to college. That really wasn't my experience. I don't know what I thought I would do. I've got older siblings. They had jobs. I guess I thought I would just get a job. I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't so concerned about my future. So it wasn't until my junior year of high school when my guidance counselor pulled me into her office and asked me if I had planned on going to college. I told her, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. Well, I just so happened to be a straight A student, and she was like, well, it's kind of a waste if you don't go. You gotta go. And at that time that I'm getting ready to graduate high school, my mom had been remarried. My parents, as a unit, were very supportive in whatever decision that I made. I talked about going into the military. I took the ASVAB. My stepdad and both of my dads, my biological dad and my stepdad, were both in the military. I have a very close cousin that was in the military. So for me, that was a very viable option. I had considered that. The whole idea of like college and job straight into career was not my aspiration.
Is the kind of lie they're sold, right? Firstly, you need to plan ahead. When it comes to the lie you're sold, it would be, the glamorous life, Sex and the City, and how that's promoted to women, and or shows like that, the girl boss type of narrative and fun TV shows that make it feel like any corporate job just a bunch of fun and with a little bit of presentation, gossiping, and having fun hanging around with co-workers. That exists for women and men, because the men equivalent might be Mad Men, Billions, Wolf on Wall Street, things like that. And it's very different in reality. A lot of these things are deliberate propaganda. You might think it's about one topic, about a drama show, or about corruption within finance, but they're really, as a subtle message, the Hollywood and CIA are very closely linked They're probably there to kind of promote certain career lifestyles to you which don't exist in reality. This is why you need to plan ahead. So most people, they have no plan, and I'm not knocking her. It's a bit of a weird system and society we have where it expects so many people who are quite young in their teenage years to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life, right? To figure out, okay, well, if you're 16 or 18 and you're at college, you have to pick certain degrees, then you're at university in your early 20s, late teens, okay, pick a particular degree, and then you're going to have to do that particular type of work, most likely for the rest of your life, if you can get jobs in that field. See, that's what I mean. People don't have a plan, and you've got to think carefully. That's why whether it's now or in your younger years, you kind of have to think through, what are my natural skills? What are my natural interests and talents? What would I be comfortable doing day to day without it annoying me too much, or that I have a natural aptitude for, right? So I'll give you an example of me about leaning into your real interests, your genuine skills. When I was growing up, I was listening to talk radio. I didn't have a TV in my room, in my bedroom as a child. I'd have a radio. So I listened to lots of talk radio, and they're quite funny talk radio stations before everything became politically correct or everything became about politics. So, for example, LBC in the UK, I'm sure some of you are aware of that. They had some funny radio hosts, Ian Lee, Chris Bull, and people like that. They would just make fun of how ridiculous society is. What people do now with talking about clown world and making fun of the liberals and things like that. So they would do it, but in a slightly different way, just making fun of everyone. And then also I would listen to a lot of podcasts. 15 years ago or more, before it was popular, there was someone called Kevin Scampoli, TWFS. He had basically an online show before everyone else had podcasts, and it was a common thing to do. And what he would do is just be talking about pro wrestling. So a lot of these like talk radio kind of things were my natural interest. And also I would be very big on writing and analysis and things like that when I was at high school. And that's kind of what I naturally fall into, right? And I realized through working certain aspects of my career, that's what I kind of things I tended to like, maybe writing some reports, explaining and presenting certain things like I do on YouTube, things like that. So it makes sense that's a better fit for me. Where some people, they kind of get pushed because they think, oh, there's a way to make money or it's a good thing to do, but they might not like it, whether it's a coding career, working in tech. Maybe they're pushed into maths and accounting because they think that's a stable career, but they might really hate it. So you really got to think carefully about what your natural skill is and what you don't mind doing. Because of course, when you're working, you're going to have to deal with an element of, you know, work you don't like or people you don't like, but it's really about what you're good at and what you can tolerate doing too. So what she's saying here about going to college, not knowing what to do, a lot of higher education is a scam, right? And the truth is, you only need the basic skills to do most jobs, right? Most people can come out of, I would say, high school or college, 16, 18 years old, and through a few years of experience, kind of do a similar job as someone who went through university, right? You don't really grow and develop loads through university in many cases, right? You'll just learn a bit more higher level skills of, like I say, writing and analytical skills. It depends what the job is. Many jobs aren't that technical, and you can gain the experience through several years and doing a little bit of basic study on the side of that day job. And the thing is, you know, like I say, you just need to have good people skills, some good technical skills too, right? And that's why I recommend when you're building skills, you should build them for self-employment, right? And your career is the secondary goal. So always see it like, okay, if you're building some skills, it might help you fit well within a corporation, but can you leverage that to some form of self-employment where you'll probably be a bit happier doing a job like that?
But here the hell we are. I have a degree in civil engineering. I am a licensed professional engineer. Now, ask me how I got here. Maybe I never dreamed of being a civil engineer. I wasn't. All of my civil engineering peers, they have like these really cute stories of my dad was a civil engineer and I used to play in his hard hat and his boots when I was a kid. Or I always loved tinkering with Legos and I wanted to be a force in creating the built environment. I hate when people ask me how I became a civil engineer because, baby, to be honest with you, I was like, if I'm going to go to college, I might as well just major in something that's going to be able to pay these loans back because, baby, I have student debt. And if we're being for real, I tried chemical engineering. Chemistry made me cry. I tried mechanical engineering. I got a D in thermodynamics. So I ended up in civil engineering. Now, don't get me wrong, I have learned to love all things infrastructure, and I love being a civil engineer. I love designing things with my hands. I love managing projects. I love being a part of the very infrastructure that allows us all to exist in this world.
So she mentions being an engineer. Okay. Now, and the thing is, it's like when people pick certain careers or certain skills to develop, it's like, what if their real interest? What if they're under the power of suggestion? You know, family members who are engineers, or maybe you live in a local town or city and the majority of people work in that industry. So is that what you want to do? So you could talk about London, for example. In London or New York, maybe you know many people who earn decent salaries. They work in finance or tech or law or accounting. So you think, oh, maybe I'll go for a legal career because that's what seems to pay well, I guess. So lots of people, you know, they kind of pivot to the area they live in or what their family members might tell them. And of course, that might just be generally what you're exposed to. But you have to think carefully, right? Because, for example, if you have a family of accountants, but that's just not your natural skill set or your interest, then obviously you shouldn't pursue that. And it's like if you're so motivated by money, you might realize you're unhappy down the line, and you're to the point where you're just too unhappy to really progress your career, and it comes across to co-workers and management, and they're reluctant to promote you. When she says learn to love, this is a bit of a red flag for me, right? I think that you should just essentially have certain key skills or key interests. I mentioned speaking and reading and writing were kind of things I had a good interest in during my teenage years, and that's kind of similar to what I do now, not exactly that, but it's the same thing with skills, right? So if you have analytical skills and you want to leverage that in an industry where you can earn a good salary, then maybe you might be the best fit for you would be engineering, right? It's a red flag though when she says you have to learn to love, which means I'm kind of forcing myself to like something or tolerating and putting up with it, right? Depending on how you look at it. It's a difference between that and kind of saying you really enjoy your job or you enjoy aspects of your job. And that's something to really bear in mind. It's like, what type of dynamic are you really comfortable with versus what you're told you should kind of endure? Because lots of people, like I say, they just go with the flow. Everyone else is doing something, and then before you know it, they're really unhappy and depressed in their life. So let's continue to listen to her here.
And if somebody would have told me, if somebody would have outlined for me 6 years ago that the unease I felt about corporate America then is the same unease I would feel about corporate America now, I don't know that I would have chosen this. I don't know if this would have been my life. Issues I have with corporate America, the reasons I don't feel like I fit in. Number one, look at me. As a Black woman in engineering, there's just, and based in where I live, there are not a lot of people who share the same experience as me in terms of what it's like going through a college system, going through a school system in which your classmates doubt you. Nobody wants to be your lab partner. You're assumed to be not as smart. That same experience and that same energy has followed me into a career, into a space. I'm about to cry. Let me stop this. As I was saying, that energy has followed me into corporate America, in which I spent most of my early career years, which I spent a lot of time trying to prove myself. And I watched my peers do the bare minimum and get praised and get accoladed, right?
She's talking about how there wasn't really an issue with the work or her doing the work. It was more the culture. And this brings me up to the core point of this video, which is about fitting in at work, which is important to achieving your career goals. She mentioned feeling unease, right? 6 years into her career. Now, lots of people, maybe they enter the corporate world and they think, oh, I'll adjust to it. But if you can't adapt to it after a long time period, then it really does show maybe it's not the right fit for you, and you need to find out something or other income sources. And this is the stress that it puts on people, because if they build a skill set, they want to work on that particular technical skill set, let's just say engineering, But then there's everything apart from engineering that makes it difficult. It's the people politics. It's the cliquey games at work. And this is why a lot of people are unhappy. And a lot of corporations, if they want to survive, particularly now corporations are dealing with major disruptors, for example, in the finance industry. I'm sure big finance firms and big banks are going to have to deal with crypto companies that do allow a bit more freedom for people to have different opinions, people to dress how they want to dress, and work a bit more flexible hours. A lot of these companies are going to do quite well. You've seen it with the tech industry, right? It became a bit more relaxed because you have to just let people be them to a certain extent to be successful, come up with innovative ideas and the company. And this is the thing, right? If you can't adjust after many years, you mentioned 6 years, if you can't adapt to it, you think it will happen, but it doesn't happen. And this is what makes people miserable over time because they're not fitting in at work. And that's why it might make the sense to make a unconventional career move, as I said at the start of the video, moving from a big company to a small company, working abroad, things like that. For example, I remember one time speaking with a contact in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and he was from the UK and he had moved to work there. I know several cases like this. And the thing is, they're doing the same work in Dubai that they do here. They're just working for a Dubai bank. And some people might say that's a major step down, right? For example, just an example, someone going from working in Goldman Sachs in London on the sales and trading floor in the investment banking division, have all this experience, then they go from Goldman Sachs to a small no-name Dubai bank. And you might say, some people on the internet, Dubai is a popular place for people to move to. It's trendy, particularly after Andrew Tate and some of the people in his space kept going on about it. What ends up happening is lots of people go, okay, well, if you move there, you have a boost in your living standards, right? And people might question it though, because you're working for a much smaller bank. And then say you want to go from that small Dubai bank back to the bigger banks in New York or London or any other hub. People might see it like, oh, well, you've worked at a smaller bank. You've kind of taken a step back in your career working in Dubai. But a lot of people, that's a better fit for them. They like the day-to-day life there. Maybe it's higher living standards for lower cost. You have lower tax. You're less stressed. You might fit in well with the co-workers. I know there's an entire band of, let's just say, upper middle class white people from London who make that kind of move to Dubai. Some people move to places like Saudi Arabia. You'd be surprised. People with engineering skills working in the oil and natural resource industry, and they might have their cliquey kind of expat community, but they feel like that's more higher class lifestyle and more higher living standards than living in London, which is kind of declining a bit like New York in terms of lower living standards, people conducting crime and everything feeling unsafe and unclean and things like that. So it might be an unconventional career move, things that other people wouldn't consider or think that you're crazy for doing, right? So you've really got to think these things through, and that's why, a key point of advice I recommend to you, spending that time thinking to yourself, right? Even if it's, dedicating your Sunday to really planning your life and coming up with different ideas, doing research 1 day a week, that really can be life-changing rather than you being miserable 5 days a week, working your day job and it going nowhere, right? And then when it comes to feeling out of place, I know I've been critical of DEI in the past, but this is different from DEI in my opinion. There is an element of race, right, at work, in the sense that people do feel uncomfortable maybe if they don't fit in with other demographics, right? And, race issues are real. People want to be with the in crowd. And I think that's maybe more important to state rather than just race. It's not that, people want to be around their same race. They want to feel part of the company. And if they feel they're outside the in group, and typically a lot of these corporate environments are not that racially diverse, you might not fit in and you feel out of place. Now, I'm not saying you have to come to work and everyone has to have the same taste in music or movies as you, but if it's like everyone else is completely different from you and they have their own in crowd and you're on the outside, like an unpopular kid at high school, then it can impact you over time and really impact your career growth because you just feel uncomfortable every day. You feel more and more self-conscious. It can really impact you hard when you've been indoctrinated, and many people have, that meritocracy is real, or meritocracy that worked in education, where you study hard and get good grades, applies to work, where if you work hard, you get paid well. That's just not the case. So, the same way it's best to tell kids that Santa Claus isn't real, you can tell them that meritocracy isn't real. Doesn't mean they can't work hard and achieve their goals, but working and doing that within a very tight paradigm where the corporate environment is going to create so many rigged obstacles for them, maybe that's not the best fit for them, or they can do it for a short time period before figuring out some more self-sufficient, independent ways of making money. Now, the thing is, right, when you go to work and you're working hard, and I've been there similar to her, and that's why I kind of relate to the video, is where you go to work and you try to prove yourself by working hard, and you realize that's just not working out for you, right? And she mentions people who do the bare minimum, getting praise, accolades, faster promotions, fitting in with corporate culture and how that's so important. So there definitely is a cultural barrier at work. That has nothing to do with your technical skills, nothing with your ability to work hard. It's kind of unspoken. It's unspoken, but it is true, right? And like I say, I don't think it's necessarily racism, but it's more like cultural barriers, cultural, in my opinion, right? For example, with my demographic, I know because every demographic works slightly differently, has different styles, without creating any contentious issues. Certain racial groups are more direct. They can come across aggressive to some people. Certain other demographics, they're more passive aggressive and they like to make little cheap shots, and they call it banter because they want to have a passive aggressive comment about you if you don't do what they say. So you have different kind of communication styles, and it really does create like kind of clashes in the office. Sometimes you'll notice that because we don't feel invested and we don't feel necessarily culturally included in the conversation at work, even though they might have pointless networking events and things like that. It really is kind of, in my opinion, from what I've seen in many companies, it's kind of an upper middle class kind of white liberal social dynamic. In the same way I might feel out of place, I think she does too, right? And I think a lot of white conservatives feel out of place at work too. It's not just people of different races. So this is what I mean, right? We don't necessarily feel invested in the outcome because we're just not, if you're not socially included necessarily, you won't feel invested in the outcome, right? And that's the reality about humans, right? Humans are naturally tribalistic, naturally have some cultural boundaries. And, if you think about it historically, people operated in tribes, typically the same race, same belief systems and things like that. And that's where you see it play out in society outside of work, right? Not necessarily always in terms of race, but, you see the rift into between left-wing and right-wing beliefs in society, and they're having different values, and how people naturally fit in with people who have the same values as them. And when you're in the corporate environment and you're pushed to kind of fit in with kind of soft, emasculated, effeminate culture, it might not fit well for you. For example, for me, I just didn't like that type of environment, but I can know how to navigate it, and I managed to make it over a decade in the industry, making it to director level. But it's all about figuring out how to make it work for you. And that's why unconventional career moves could be the best fit.
And I started to realize that no matter how good my work is, no matter how hard I try, no matter how many hours I work over, no matter how much I stay late, if I don't play the same game, if I don't play the corporate game, I'm going to lose. If you are the type of person who wants to do their job and go home, corporate's not for you. If you are the type of person who has any kind of life outside of your corporate job that is meaningful to you, if you have any relationships that dictate your energy being divided away from your corporate job into that space, corporate is not going to work for you. And what I mean by that is, if you want to work in a corporate environment and you do good work and you work hard, but you're in at 9 and you're out at 5 and you don't go to the happy hours, you don't brown nose, you're not overly enthusiastic, and you don't overshare with your coworkers, you don't fit into the company culture. You're the weak link. You're not contributing as much as everybody else is.
Working hard, having high quality work, working long work hours, it doesn't matter. And I've tried all of those things. I've done the things working on the weekends, doing extra work in the evenings, and depending on the role, depending on the project, of course, sometimes that might be necessary, particularly maybe in some finance jobs or tech or some kind of those longer work hour jobs. But a lot of the times that doesn't really work out, right? A lot of people are not happy with that. You have people, like she says, co-workers. I've dealt with co-workers who know the bare minimum, don't know basic things in the corporate world, but they've been there, they're on high 6-figure salaries. People who don't know basic technical information of the job. And it's just like laughable sometimes. There's been a couple instances where I've been on the trading floor in major investment banks, and one or two times I just laughed because some people said some stupid stuff on the team and they're more senior than me, and it was completely laughable. Exactly. It's just like ridiculous. Some people who are doing certain amount of work, that certain amount of pay that you just can't believe. So this is the thing, the main determining factor is whether you liked and whether you're fitting in, and nothing to do with the quality of your work or how many hours you work. And what she's saying here about not having an identity outside of work, you have to have your identity fully invested in a lot of these corporations for it to work for you and for you to be able to succeed, right? Must be able to fit in with a corporate culture, which is really typically AWF culture. Is affluent, white, female, liberal, feminist culture. That's what it is. And what she's talking about is doing a good job within a very time efficient manner, which should make a good employee, right? So they can do a good job, do it on time, do it within the work hours, and dedicate time outside of work to their personal life commitments, family, fitness, whatever that would be, so that they're working effectively, sustainable, they're not overworking themselves, they're not burning out, they're happy at work because they have time for their personal life. But that's not what the system wants, right? That's not what a lot of these corporations want. They want you to do the happy hour thing, sucking up to management, being over enthusiastic, like she says, oversharing. And I've been in those situations where I've kind of seen it from both avenues, right? Where you're doing things on time, doing it effectively, and then managers are just complaining about at you. And I've dealt with this earlier in my career, where they just say in one way or another, essentially you need to spend more time socializing with co-workers or going to work, social events. And I'm just like, oh, I'm getting the work done. But that's just not enough for a lot of these people. They want you to have some level of personal identity with the company. And they don't get it if you're someone who just doesn't want to do that or just wants to do a good job. And that's what it is. And I've seen that. Like, if you want to maintain healthy boundaries, they're going to keep pushing until you break those healthy boundaries and you become completely invested in the job and it becomes ridiculous. And then the thing is, you need to figure out what lets you climb the ladder quickest. And that's what a lot of people figure out. It's not working hard, as I say. You're not doing the most or the best work. What's going to help you climb that corporate ladder quickest is playing that social political game, being popular, building that type of network where people like you, even if your work isn't the best, right? And it depends which company you're working at. If you're some of these major corporations, even if you don't genuinely believe in it, they want you to have your entire identity related to work. So you can put on an act to a certain extent and be super social at work just to kind of keep up false pretenses. Now, a lot of the times company culture is not necessarily professional. It's really a blend of your personal identity, or you can commit your entire identity to the job, like I'm saying. So really kind of think carefully where the line is for you, what extent you might need to lie or have fake political opinions that they agree with, maybe fake certain elements of your personal life and how you describe it, just to make it more palatable to these ridiculous co-workers that can really try to put pressure on you to ensure you fit in with the rest of them and their kind of consensus opinion. I've worked in the finance industry for over a decade, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and I've dealt with a lot of these scenarios she's describing here. I offer career advice, link in description. If you want to speak with me directly, I'll be happy to help you. Let me know in the comments how you feel about not fitting in at work or how you deal with that type of aspect. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.